Hey, what's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. Subscribe to Saturday Down South on YouTube. I'm Connor O'Gara. Will, I've got good news and I've got good news. You ready for it?
Oh man, what an intro. I can't wait.
Double good news. How about that? You came to the right place. In the words of Shabuzi, I just need some good news. You came to the Saturday Down South podcast for some good news. The good news is that the Week 13 slate is over. It's done. Stick a fork in it. History will remember it for a few things, which we'll get to today, but probably not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. I think you can very easily tell the story of 2025 in college football without necessarily getting into a whole lot of Week 13 sticking points. That's the good news, because this slate was, first of all, there are no bad Saturdays, but if there is a slate that is as close to basura as possible in terms of build up and then actual follow through, this was probably it. But again, no bad Saturdays. So
Yeah,
that's good news.
we have talked about that all year where I was like, it's crazy how every Saturday is amazing. And even in the preview, I was like, oh man, Kentucky Vandy, like we got all these rivalry games. There's gonna be super. The only close game was LSU Western Kentucky. So not the
Pitt,
Saturday I
Georgia
was
Tech was
anticipating
pretty
at
good.
all.
Pitt, Georgia Tech was pretty good. That was good multi-view. I had on also as well. I had TCU Houston on. Connor Wigman. I'll never sell stock. I just got to thank for former A&M quarterbacks. What can I say?
Plenty of fish in the sea in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, I had that one on for a little bit. So we had like not really though. It was lopsided, very very lopsided slate. So it's almost like in the NCAA tournament when the first round doesn't have the upsets, doesn't have the buzzer beaters and stuff like that, and then you set up for the second round or whatever. Maybe you get to the Sweet 16. It's at that point, and people are like, "Oh yeah," but then you look at the slate and then you realize, okay, because of this lack of chaos, that means that rivalry week is going to be awesome, and we've got great matchups, great storylines, playoff implications all over the place, and so that's the good news with a slate that sleepy, wherein I think everyone realized mostly the SEC takes the brunt of it for Cupcake Week and whatnot, but everybody kind of looked at that slate and goes, well, it sucks that we didn't have these premier matchups in the penultimate week of the regular season.
Yeah, it's funny, in the weekend where Dan Lanning got after the SEC, talking about it's like a cupcake league basically, and it's like for number one, you came from the SEC, so welcome. Number two, I believe that was like their first like ranked game they played this deep in the season, which is crazy. So
No,
yeah,
Penn State was ranked at the time, but they didn't have any ranked teams, any teams on that they've played that are still ranked.
that are still ranked. There we go. So it's like, yeah, but if you are a hater, it was a good week for it. But at the same time, I think it's a really good way to view it, which is that nobody's season really got ruined, this weekend. Except, I mean, the only rivalry.
Georgia Tech.
That's what I was gonna say. The only rivalry weekend game that I think might have gotten like a little bit of air taken out is Georgia Tech, Georgia, because that was like for a playoff spot for sure.
Lock of the week. Lock of the week was Pitt.
Watch
out. The week hit. I'm just saying. I was, everybody that I saw was like Georgia Tech. And it made me feel that much better, especially when they jumped out to the 28-0 lead. Not the best Haynes King get him to New York type game with some of the decisions that were made. I'll forever love Haynes King, but yeah,
another former A&M quarterback. Look at that.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I just watch A&M quarterbacks. It's just what I do. Current, former, you name it. What's Kellen Mond up to these days? No. Trevor Knight. We have a lot to get to. Kind of, sort of, not really. We will do the 4 games in the SEC involving power conference matchups. We will get to what the playoff top 12 is going to look like. We're going to sprinkle in some lane talk here at some point. Maybe we'll just pick Tennessee, Florida to talk about it then, because Lord knows that's probably more interesting than anything that happened on the field on Saturday night outside of Tennessee just exercising those demons. But before we get to everything, guys, I've been talking about Dabble for a very, very long time. It is one of the newest and best apps in the DFS space. They've wasted no time making a name for themselves. Dabble's social function is second to none. They offer a wide variety of sports for making picks, including college football, NFL. Use promo code SDS2 when you sign up today. Receive $25 in bonus cash. No deposit required. Again, that's promo code SDS2 for $25 in bonus cash, courtesy of the good folks at Dabble. Will, let's start with Mizzou and Oklahoma. This game was played in 1995. And that's the way that Brent Venables likes it. And if you're upset with that, I don't know what to tell you, man. This is kind of what you sign up for.
Venables is just like some type of a time wizard that's just pulling teams back to 1995. It's like, hey, son, can you win in 1995? Creed suddenly on the radio. Like, DeBoer, we're going, oh, my God.
Creed's before Creed's. We're not talking 1995. We're talking like
That's like grunge
Hootie and the
era, yeah.
Blowfish. I think
Yeah.
1995. I think Hootie and the Blowfish. That's my
Yeah,
first
good
thought.
point. Creed would be too modern for the era of football that Brent
Yes.
Venables plays. That's a good point.
What do we got? What's like peak 95? Because like you're kind of out of grunge. Yeah, no, I mean, I that's typically what Return of the Mac was 96. Okay, you get it. Yeah, you get it. Pearl Jam 95. You know, a lot of good music 1995.
A little bit of Travis Tritt in there.
Yeah, Travis Tritt 95. Okay, this is Joe Diffie. Jason Aldean said that was 1994. Okay, yeah, 1995, still a good year of music. But yeah, you could picture 1995 football when I tell you that Brent Venables wants it back because it's mesh jerseys, it's neck rolls, it's shoulder pads that look like they're just bursting through the mesh jerseys the mesh jerseys just cannot possibly contain these shoulder pads. They're that big. You can't even raise your arms up fully over your head. This is the world Brent Venables has created for himself. This is the world that Brent Venables exists in. It's the world that he thrives in.
That's a great strategy by them, by the way, to wear those Unity jerseys and just look like the Red Scare or something. Like you don't know who anybody is. There's rec specs in there. They're this weird shade of gray. People are just flying to the ball. They're like shadows coming at you.
And for what it's worth, the single worst uniforms I have seen by an SEC team this year were worn by the Oklahoma Sooners on Saturday. My God, what are we doing here? We're going to look back on this era and say, why did we think gray was a thing? And maybe Tennessee gets away with the smoky grays. I'm not even really a fan of those, to be honest. I'd rather have Tennessee just go full Halloween and go full black and orange. But the gray that Oklahoma wore, especially, you can't do that for a game that kicks off at 11 a.m. Central. I used to go to these Nebraska games, and they wear like these all black uniforms for an 11 a.m. game against Northwestern. And then they lose, and I'd say, you lost because of your uniforms. Stop this. It's madness. Don't wear uniforms that ugly. And, oh, wait, Will, what if I told you that on the back? Wait for this. They said unity. Did you feel unified watching this? Because I've never felt more divided watching a team play well and then actively rooting for them to not play well just strictly because of the uniforms that they chose to wear.
I'm telling you, man, I think it was like a blue turf situation with Bo Prabula. They were just like, we're going to fade into the background. He's not going to be able to see us. He won't know who to read of the defenders. He's like, Unity? I don't know who my option is.
I hated it. As someone that's like trying, I feel like I have a pretty good, perception of this guy makes a play for Oklahoma, and I know exactly who it is in that moment. And then every single time you see the name on the back and it looks the same, you're like, wait a minute, was that Deion Burks? Was that Isaiah Satania? Who made that tackle here? That was Taylor Wine, I think, making a tackle in the backfield. That probably. Anyway, I realized they have numbers too, but it was throwing me for a loop. This game was a slog, an absolute slog. 17-6, Oklahoma wins this. No offensive touchdowns for Mizzou, who returned Bo Prabula, by the way, just continued to progress later and later in the week. I realized when we talked in the pod, we had said like, yeah, there's a chance, but why would you want to throw him to the Wolves like that? Will, you and I had one more rushing yard than Bo Prabula in this game. Not ideal for Mizzou.
Yeah, his progression stopped at his healing. He got on the field and he regressed. It was like, maybe I played this sport. Is this hockey?
Yeah, I wonder too. And revisionist history, if Bo Prabula ends up kind of catching Oklahoma by surprise, if he does some things, it ends up being, wow, what a move for Drink to be able to kind of play this card and go win a top 10 game in the regular season for the first time since 2013. A little bit, and maybe I should have brought this up in the pod. It felt a little bit desperate, kind of seeing that Prabula was a bit limited with the ankle. I mean, like, if you're not going to have that full arsenal with him, he's kind of one of those guys where I don't know how much it makes sense to have him out there. And that's someone who's been very critical of Matt Zollers and his inability to complete a forward pass. So I get it. Maybe he gives you a little bit more versatility, but I kind of wonder if Drink was just thinking to himself, I'm from Oklahoma. This would be a sweet one to win. Go on the road, beat Brent Venables, ruin their playoff path. I wonder if Drink got a little bit in his head and if they could have just waited another week. Bo Prabula, really tough, gritty to be out there at all, but I don't know. The offense was very much stuck in the mud.
It was gross, man. Yeah, and honestly, I think all of that does ultimately fall on the head coach to some degree, right? Because We could talk about his health, but I do think that just goes to the game plan. The last guy I honestly am going to blame for this is Pabula, because at the end of the day, either he's healthy or he's not,
Yeah.
whatever. But the game plan didn't actually help him at all. So it was like he would have needed to be so healthy to run what they called, basically. Because I don't know if I've really made this joke on here before, but like the concept of a dual threat quarterback is often hopium. Usually what we consider a dual threat quarterback is a guy that can just kind of use his legs. You know what I'm
Correct.
saying? And often you do sacrifice some of the arm part of it. Like a guy like, Jaden Daniels or Manziel or like Cam or like the few guys that I say are a true dual threat quarterback where you got to guard everything. And Pabula is kind of at times a single threat quarterback with his legs when things start to break down for him. When you talk about an environment on the road, what does he trust more? His legs. So if he can't use that, he's kind of a no threat quarterback. So you have to do kind of the Sarkisian method that he's done a little bit with Arch, where you go, my guy didn't have it today. Let me do the dump offs. Let me do some creative runs. And with Drink, I mean, in a stage where we'll talk about the lane stuff, like you said later, it's kind of his audition to be considered as one of these, big for these big jobs. And can he win the big game? This is an Oklahoma team that very much could have been had, I think. And from a coaching standpoint and an execution standpoint, they just had no desire to do that.
Yeah, they felt like all their big passing plays that Mizzou got against this very loaded Oklahoma defense were big throwing windows, schemed open, and then the one where Mizzou actually marched down the field when it was 17-6 and could have made it a one-score game. I actually thought the best ball that Bo Prabula threw all day was the ball in the end zone on 4th down to Kevin Coleman Jr. And probably a catch that you'd like an experienced receiver like that to be able to make in that spot. And so it's tough. And I realize I'm probably piling on a little bit, knowing that it's a very difficult venue to go in and win against that defense when it's playing as well as it was, and really adjusted phenomenally after the opening drive. I mean, Mizzou has the opening script. They kind of have this methodical drive. They go down there and they get the field goal. They end the game as sack adjusted rushing yards we're talking about here, 88 yards. That's it. And again, that's factoring in for the sacks. That's the number 6 rushing offense in college football. It was 70 rushing yards for Mizzou with the sacks. Mizzou's worst total in a game all year, worst total that they've had since the A&M game last year.
Yeah, and going into this game, obviously Hardy was like the leading by yards rusher in America, right? And
Yes,
so,
correct.
like, that's the thing is you hear that number and you're like, that's still no for them. They need that is their it should be higher than passing yards for this offense on the road.
Yeah, definitely. Has to be. Third time that Mizzou has had 0 offensive touchdowns in a game in the Drinkwitz era. Only 2 other times were at Georgia in 2021, maybe the best defense in college football of the 21st century. And then last year at Bama with Drew Pine as the starter. And you don't need me to remind you about the Drew Pine experience. It was not pleasant. Even though we did beat Oklahoma ultimately last year, but still, this game was it was really, really tough sledding for Mizzou offensively. And Oklahoma, still without R. Mason Thomas, just kind of keeps dominating respected offenses. I mean, I truly think, and I know I've said this to a certain extent, so I'm trying not to repeat myself here, but I think this sequence was a reminder of why you wanted Brent Venables and why, even if you had your pick, you probably wouldn't take Lincoln Riley and the way that he constructs a team. You were facing a ranked foe for the 3rd consecutive time, probably going to have to find a way to win ugly. You had, again, the nation's leading rusher coming into your building. Give me Brent Venables for that situation over Lincoln Riley. Like, even if Lincoln Riley had gone on the road and won at Oregon, which, spoiler alert, that did not happen. So chaos scenario, done. Even if he had been able to do that, I still just think this is kind of exactly what you've been building towards if you're Oklahoma, because they've now beaten 5 ranked teams, the last 3 of which were all with their playoff lives on the line against capable opponents. And Mizzou is now going to fall out of the top 25, but very likely, at least in the playoff poll. But Bama, Michigan, Tennessee, they're all still going to be ranked on Tuesday. And those 2 losses that you suffered, Texas and Ole Miss, those
Aging
teams are
like
still going
fine
to be.
wine, honestly. Yeah, Texas
Yeah.
is an even better team now probably than when they beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, they're still going to be in the top 25, even amidst their issues, which we'll get to in a bit. But it's a schedule with 7 teams in the top 25, like 7 teams. The most Lincoln Riley ever faced in a regular season was 3. So, I mean, this is what he ran from. This is the exact
He
gauntlet
was
that he
right.
ran
I hate
from.
to credit him, but he was right. He was not built for this. He got up out of here, and Brent Venables had to deal with it. And I mean, we made a lot of like noise about like the Florida schedule, which is horrific and scary. But the Oklahoma schedule is second. It's right there. If you think about, I mean, having to play Alabama and beating them in back-to-back years. I mean, the amount of times that's happened. So really can't say enough positive. Going to Rocky Top and having to win in that environment, I feel like Venables has bought himself at least kind of an extension here.
I think I messed that up, actually. I think it's 6 ranked teams in the regular season because Texas wasn't ranked at the time of the matchup, but Auburn
Oh,
was.
well, if we're counting Texas as a non-ranked, like, okay.
Yeah, a lot of ranked teams. It's a gauntlet, and he's the fifth. Brent Venables is now the fifth coach in the 2020s to beat 5 AP top 25 teams in the regular season. That's good. That's really good. 12th time that's happened in the playoff era, which kind of sounds like a lot, but then you realize, well, 5 of those 12 instances were Saban and Dabo doing their thing in the 2010s. Bob Stoops did it in 2015, so it's not necessarily even an unbelievable historical stat for Oklahoma, but I almost think it's more impressive than the 2015 run, and knowing kind of what's at stake, knowing that if you're Brent Venables, you've got these hot seat discussions coming into the year, you're going to have a new boss, and it's just got to have it. And you're without your best defensive player for the last 2.5 games. Like, I don't think that should be lost amidst all of this. And, like if you take the best player off a specific unit, go ask LSU what it's like to adjust without Whit Weeks or something defensively. Like, you see it and you feel it. Maybe it's different talking about an edge rusher as opposed to somebody that's like the captain of the defense. I get it from that standpoint, but I tip my cap to Brent Venables, and I did not think that I would be sitting here at this point with them being one very favorable matchup away from essentially locking in a home playoff berth.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like going backwards in time. We should have talked about how daunting this task was, right? Now that we're looking back at it, it's like, wow, this is pretty fire. And I think part of it is that we manage our expectations throughout, and that goes to the having a target on your back versus not, right? Where
We talked about it after Texas, though. We
Mhm.
looked at the issues that they had in the Texas game. We said, guys, look at the latter half of this schedule for Oklahoma. This is, if they don't figure some stuff out, they could easily be staring at 7-5.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm talking about in terms of expectations, at least like
Yeah.
preseason or almost at any point in the season. It's like the Bama game, I think, is when we looked at this team and went, huh, this could be a very good team, versus like, oh, like this team that's kind of incomplete or whatever. And when you add the special teams greatness they've had, when you add the ability to make these clutch
Yeah.
plays and get rushing yards from wherever they could find them, and to break off these big like chunk plays through the passing game whenever they need them, and really to just never break, right? I feel like that's the Oklahoma brand at this point is bend, 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 bend. And when you're scheming that out and you're looking at a team and you're projecting, it's like, surely they're not going to go into Knoxville and just shut that offense down for essentially 4 quarters or, 3 quarters basically in the aggregate. And it's like, no, they're going to do that. And that's what's crazy about, the new era is that defense looks so much more impressive now because offenses are so diverse that you see. And again, maybe that's not exactly the case with the Drinkwitz team with a limited quarterback. But when you look at the resume for Oklahoma, it's like, you've also shut down Joey Aguilar. Like I said, you've also shut down Ty Simpson. And so offense takes all these different forms in the modern era, and they've just been able to find an answer for all of them, man, except for Ryan Niblett.
Yeah, really. For punting to Ryan Niblett in the Texas game, probably not the best decision overall that's been made. But yeah, you're right. I mean, special teams, that's kind of what flipped this game in a lot of ways. Like you get the blocked kick on it was Peyton Bowen reached around, get the block kick. I thought he blocked the first one too on that, and they've just Taylor Wine did it last week, which kind of like self-combusted Alabama after that with the Connor Talty blow up with a long snapper.
They hate that kicker, man. That is so funny. We talked about extending the Saban era. You guys have never hated a kicker more. Welcome.
Yeah. Yali. That situation developing, needless to say, in Tuscaloosa. But yeah, they just, and here's what I'll say about this offense, which is not particularly good at all. Okay. But nobody's going to confuse this Oklahoma offense in 2025 for the ones that you came to know in the 2010s. Like, we're not going to confuse those things or say that Oklahoma is more built to win, when it gets to like, or that it's, set up to win a national championship, because there are obviously still limiting factors when you look at the ground game, the struggles there and all that stuff. But it does at least feel like this Oklahoma offense knows that it's very limited right now. And it knows that it's not going to put together a ton of these impressive drives where it's getting 6-7 yards of play. So when they get that moment, they have to seize it. When they get that field goal block, boom, right afterwards, they flip the momentum with the long touchdown on the crosser to Isaiah Satania, and it's 87 yards off to the races. That's basically half of John Mateer's passing yards in this game. And you're able to find, it's almost like they're searching in the couch cushion for quarters and nickels and stuff like that when they're searching for these rushing yards, because they have to kind of pick their spots because they're not getting these wide open holes that they're just bursting through. And it's kind of, hey, we're going to get 3 here, we're going to get 4 there. It's not necessarily even 3 yards in a cloud of dust. It's methodically making sure that they can kind of play the field position game. And if you had told anyone going into this one, Oklahoma is going to outrun Mizzou, you'd say, okay, Oklahoma wins. It's as simple as that. And that's what ends up happening, obviously. And if you've got a defense this good, Will, especially if you're talking about hosting a home playoff game, you got a shot to at least make some noise and be a really brutal matchup for 60 minutes. Great stat from Mike Hauk, the Oklahoma SID. Apologies, Mike, if I just butchered the pronunciation of your last name. I've only seen it, not heard it. Since 1998, Will, Oklahoma is 47-3 in November home games. Best in America. Obviously not sitting here playing a whole lot of December home games, I wouldn't think. Maybe a couple sprinkled in there. But if OU can beat LSU and get that home playoff game, the defense gets a little bit healthier. The backfield gets a little bit healthier. Maybe Mateer gets a little bit healthier. That's not going to be fun for a 9 or a 10 seed. Maybe that's going to end up being Bama or something. It's just not going to be fun for an opposing offense to look at what Oklahoma has done well to, as you mentioned, all the different styles that they have adjusted to, and to know that you're going to have to go in there and try and pull out a dogfight type of a win and playing a game that you probably aren't very comfortable in throughout.
Yeah, and I was trying to find a better phrase. Last time we talked about Mateer for like a modern game manager, and the easier answer is leadership, right? But I like to have fun, so I'd call him a game executive, right? He's a guy
like that, Will.
He's like
That's
making
good.
the executive decisions. He's out here again. He's below 50% completion again, but in the moments he needs it, he can get the choke play. He can say, "Hey, we're gonna circle back. We're gonna delegate. We're gonna call a quick huddle here. Get this ball down the field. We're gonna get in field goal range." And I think that he's again just a perfect fit for this system. And just a team that it reminds me of. I'm not comparing these two teams like even in style necessarily, but it reminds me of when NFL teams play the Eagles, where you look up and you're like, how is this team?
That was the comp I made.
Like
that was the comp I made in the preview pod. Remember?
No, you're so right, man. Yeah. I was like, yeah, I've stolen your comp as well. I'm like, where did
you're like, oh, let me come up with something.
That's I did that the other day with someone. They're like, who told me this? Like, it was me. But yeah, no, I fully agree with you, man. It's like in these big moments, it's like, how is this team beating me? And so yeah, I think that's it. And again, you never know who's going to beat you with this team, so it's hard to stop them. Whereas you go in on the Mizzou side, and again, it just feels like it's scripted. It feels like what we would expect, unfortunately, which is shut down Hardy and it's done. So yeah, I think this team, and maybe not if, more when they can beat LSU. So I'm sure we got the kickoff time, but I think we could just schedule that. If LSU is struggling with Western Kentucky, that game might set football back 50 or 60 years. But I have a pretty good feeling who's going to win it. I don't want to spoil my picks here. But that being said, yeah, I'm very just interested by, to your point, like what this team can do in the playoff, because it really hasn't been these high flying offenses. And I will say, like, there is no blueprint for how to win a 12-team playoff. I mean, what Ohio State did last year was so strange. It's only happened one time. The difference between a BCS to a 4-team to a 12-team, I think that it's almost like the early days of UFC, where a guy's got like a boxing glove on, one guy's like a sumo wrestler, everybody's like trying to figure it out. And so this era of expansion is going to be so fascinating, because it's going to be, if a couple ground teams win in a row, oh, you got to have a ground game. A couple defensive teams win in a row, oh, you got to have a defense. But I think they're built to where they're not scared of anyone. And I always talk about fear. And so much of the game is looking across. They're talking about, like, remember the Notre Dame Alabama championship, where it's like they just never felt like they could win. Oklahoma feels like they can beat anybody, which is awesome.
And even if this ends in the predictable way of them losing a game in which they fall behind 2 scores and it just feels like it's too much, and they lose to a team in one of these games, and maybe it is an Ohio State or something that they run into, and it's 21-3 or something like that, and you're just kind of knowing that this offense is really not built to come back from that. Still, though, I think that it's just no small feat, and it's hard. It's going to be hard for Oklahoma to end the season feeling like it was a disappointment with what they've already been able to do in beating another ranked team like that. Nice little feather in Brent Venables' cap, especially as he's watching his predecessor not get defensive stops in a big time game. Who could have thought? Who could have thought? All right, Kentucky, Vandy. I had a moment watching this game that felt like the most surreal Vandy moment throughout this 2-year run. And I'm not saying like it was personal to me, but I was just trying to put myself in the position of someone that has watched this program, that has scratched my head at this program, that has then not thought about this program for a really long time because they've not warranted it. and then all of a sudden become a program that you can't not think of. That's why I love this sport. Something that I just would have liked to have told myself 15 months ago, even 3 months ago, would have been great to be able to know that this would actually play out in a real live tackle football game. At the end of the third quarter, Diego Pavia is begging Clark Lee to stay in as Vandy is up 1 billion points on Kentucky. He has balled out already. He has done everything and more to show you that he is that dude. And Clark Lee, who's clearly trying to say he's the manager who walks out to the mound and his pitcher's got, he's through 7 and he's got a no-hitter and he struck out 15, but his pitch counts at 125. And he's going, I know, but it's early August. We're going to need you, man. We're going to need you. Okay. I know you're excited. And Clark Lee in this moment has to juggle penultimate game of the regular season. I'm going to say penultimate as much as I possibly can. He's like, I got a Heisman candidate here at quarterback who wants to stay in, break school records, probably set himself up for the Heisman, watching his family wear, Diego for Heisman t-shirts and celebrating every single touchdown and getting every single reaction from his family. He's got all of these things working in his favor. And Clark Lee also has to debate, well, what's reckless, because we're chasing a playoff spot here. We're trying to set ourselves up next week to make sure that we're doing everything to be healthy coming out of this game, which is already decided. And I've got to debate, do I leave my quarterback in or do I take him out with the playoff in mind? That is a dilemma right there that I just never thought a Vandy football coach would get in my lifetime. And yet the stoic Clark Lee it looked like he realized it, and it seemed like he was laughing to himself at how absurd this is. And that's for someone that has said some things that we have said on this podcast, like, what do you mean, Clark Lee, you're not going to stop until Vanderbilt's the number 1 football program in the country? What do you mean, Diego Pavia, you're going to win a national, you have your sights set on a national championship this year? And for those two to share that moment in real time is kind of the ultimate how do you like me now moment. And it had to feel surreal for anybody that has consumed Vanderbilt football in recent memory.
Connor, let me just zoom out to a moment in time. I don't know if I forgot this is 3 or 4 years ago, but we're at the SC Media Days Hotel in Atlanta, and we're trying to Inspector Clouseau Scooby-Doo through who gave Vanderbilt a vote to win the SEC, and thinking to ourselves, what an unserious troll of a person. You're making
Rip
a joke.
their credential.
You take their credential. You're making
a
joke out of this profession. How could you come in here in SEC Media Day and say that Vanderbilt could win the SEC? And we're looking here. 2 back-to-back years where Vandy has been maybe not in contention for the SEC, but certainly in contention for a playoff spot. A couple of years in a row with wins over Alabama, with handling business on the road in these big environments, and you're just like, oh, what did they know?
We've run out of words, I think. We really have. But think about this. So as Diego Pavia is getting every blade of grass that he wants, he ends this game in historic fashion. Gets the Vandy single game passing record. Even more impressive, 484 passing yards he ends up with. Corey Price had this stat for Kentucky. Most passing yards against a Kentucky defense since some fellow named Peyton Manning threw for 523. When ironically enough, Phil Fulmer was trying to get him the Heisman in the penultimate week of the regular season in 1997. Crazy. 6 touchdowns for Diego Pavia in this one. 532 yards of offense. He's up to 34 total touchdowns, 3,585 yards of offense. A couple weeks ago, after the Texas game, I'm saying, guys, I know he just lit up the scoreboard. Statistically speaking, he's probably not going to have the profile to be able to get to New York unless Vandy is in the playoff or... I mean, at this, because I said at that point that ruled him out of SEC title contention. Like, they're really going to have to get into the playoff, and I don't think it's realistic that he wins it. But I still had the door open for him to be able to get to New York at that point. I couldn't have imagined the 3-game stretch of what he would put together, because it's unlike anything he's done in his career. He has not been a stat compiler throughout his career, and all of a sudden you're looking up and going, "Oh my gosh, he's got some of the best numbers of anybody in college football," like beyond just the simple fact that he has Vandy competing for a playoff spot next week, which is not a given the lack of chaos that we had in week 13. But man, at what point do we actually just go, yeah, nothing is just going to surprise us anymore with this thing? He's just out here. He and Jeremiah Love at one point were trading touchdowns back and forth, almost like they were jockeying for a position of who's going to get to New York. Diego Pavia is a legitimate shot to get to New York. A
Yeah,
legitimate shot.
and I think you should. And in kind of the Max Duggan like story sense, I think you need to talk about Vanderbilt when you tell the story of the last two college football seasons. And to your point, what's so bizarre about this too is like, he's had a couple of these moments here or there, like, as far as the big, like the emotional, like storybook style. And guys, people on social media don't like Diego Pavia. Get over it. I hate to say it, but it's jealousy. Like if your team's worse than Vanderbilt, figure it out. I don't know. Like they have so many things going against them. If you don't like this guy having fun, this is what you need. You have to gaslight yourself to be good at Vanderbilt. I'm sorry that upsets you, but that is why your program is probably different than theirs. Anyway, so that being said, a guy who is leading his team in carries, rushing yards, tied for touchdowns. Remember last year, it was actually during the LSU game. He had a guy wide open and just couldn't get the ball there. And you could tell he was just hurt. And in that moment, I was like, wow, this flawed LSU team that's probably been worse than Vandy has a shot to beat them at home. This year, it's like he got into MJ's secret stuff in this game. He has like some zip on the ball. Like the fact that it's like he's like teleporting the ball like he's an NFL QB, which is the one thing we never thought we'd say. Probably to me, the most unbelievable thing here, where it goes, oh, it's not that he's like guys are falling down sideways catching the ball. It's that he's hitting them in stride and they're just still running. And it's like, and again, like Kentucky, it's Kentucky. Okay, cool. This is a Kentucky defense that we've talked about has like kind of bowed up in recent weeks. And I think the fact that he came out there, especially on senior night with all this stuff on the line, going into to set up this Tennessee game, and just balled, man. It's like he's getting better every week. Instead of last year where he started to fall, he's playing his best football right now.
The ball that he threw to Junior Sherrill in the corner of the end zone, put that against air. I think it's the best throw he's had since he's come to Vandy. I really do. It was a dime. Couldn't believe it. Was watching in real time and was blown away at the timing. I mean, the window was just that big. It wasn't even necessarily him doing his usual thing where it's the mobility that impresses you and he's throwing to his left. He just makes all of these plays now, and there are no limitations. And no, he might not have, he might not have a Joe Milton arm. He might not have a bazooka, but he makes all the throws now, and it's incredible. And this was a Kentucky defense that coming in, we said in the preview pod, they'd averaged 6.7 points in the last 3 games. They're really emerging, and I know that they're a little bit banged up here, not having Alex Afari out there, but it's still a Mark Stoops coach defense that was playing with some pride, had won 3 consecutive games. Diego Pavia was a hot knife through butter in this one. Like Trey Richardson was a walking chunk play in this one. Junior Sherrill, not even just on that play, but he was brilliant throughout it. Didn't even need a ton of Eli Stowers in this one. And I know this defense deserves credit. I try and give credit to Steve Gregory because I do think that hire, ultimately that promotion that Clark Lee made has been really, really pivotal for this team. But Pavia is so special. He's so special. And seeing him celebrate senior day, his final home game, we think, probably. I don't think he's going to find any more eligibility. Maybe. Probably. He acted like it.
Have you seen this is just funny. All the like a couple of JUCO athletes that have been here because I think like Joey Aguilar joined a lawsuit or whatever to get more eligibility. People are like, oh, get a job. It's like, no, I like watching fun football. Stop telling people to get a job. Who
this
cares?
Is his job.
Yeah, why is it? Why do we want worse college football? Like it's because other people do assimilate into society. Let them just be Uncle Rico and play forever at this point. I don't care. If you can't stop Vandy, you can't stop Vandy.
Well, ask yourself this. How many players in the last 15 years, so since 2011, have been more valuable to their respective universities than Diego Pavia has been to Vandy? Because I can make a list of the most valuable players since 2011 that includes Manziel. I'd say Deshaun Watson for what he did for Clemson. I realize things have changed with how he's viewed in the public light, but still I would argue Deshaun Watson, RG3, Burrow at LSU, and Baker. And probably Baker's impersonator, Stetson Bennett IV. And I say scout team Baker is what I should have said. But that's all. I think I'll concede all of those. And then I think with everybody else that you would argue since 2011, most valuable players to their respective universities, I think I'm at least making a good case for Pavia against the rest. Maybe there's a guy mixing Cam's 2010, so we can't include him there. But just that 15-year stretch, he's on the short list of the most valuable college football players. And even if that doesn't result in a playoff berth, even if that doesn't result with him getting to New York, I just don't think it's that crazy to say that at all. Like, considering what this team is, like they just won 9 games in the regular season for the first time since 1915. Woodrow Wilson administration.
I was going to say, I can't even immediately tell you who the presidency was. That was like a lot pre-depression.
Didn't have to look that one up.
Yeah.
That one I knew, top of the brain. League of Nations, obviously. But like, just put that into perspective with all things Diego Pavia. Somebody's going to have an example of a guy that's maybe more valuable in that stretch. But man, that was a very fitting send-off for him in Nashville. And I loved watching him. It was great.
Really quick, I think a couple of guys out of that list. Derrick Henry, I think, is right there.
But like, Bama had already won 3 titles in 4 years to that, like, before 2015. And I'm not saying it makes him a better player. Derrick Henry, yeah, you consider him a better player, but just in terms of changing, impact and all those different things, like, I don't know. I'd argue, I think I could have a really good case to argue that Pavia is more valuable to Vandy than Derrick Henry to Bama.
Oh, I'm just talking about some dudes. I'm not even putting them above him. Jaden Daniels, obviously, right there, I think. But yeah, I think he's right. No, I'm right there with you. Going from, see, you're doing the way that I view the MVP, which I always really appreciate, which is take the guy off the team. How bad is this team without him? And the answer is, we even saw this. Like, we were talking about this in the preview where I was like, oh yeah, they have a couple of like terrible seasons. You're like, dude, that was with Clark Lee. And I'm like, yeah, they were still, like, we remember the Florida win. We remember the Kentucky win. We all remember those other games where they're just getting smoked, right? And again, different era college football, which is weird to say with it being that recent history. But even under this head coach, like, now Clark Lee is going to have to defend the "Are you a Diego Pavia merchant?" And they're doing a great job recruiting and with Barton Simmons and some of those boys, which I don't think that'll be that big of a deal. But still, that being said, in terms of changing the tide for a program, that's what I think is like such a big deal. You see these big things like, you know, when Duke had their run and all that, and the players that came and broke through, he could be one of those guys in the SEC for Vandy.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about like Duke basketball. And
yes, Duke basketball. Like the first generation of guys are like, oh, I guess we can win at Duke. You know, it's not, you know,
be a little bit tougher probably in this day and age, but I get what you're saying. And if you have that core in place from a personnel standpoint with Tim Beck as the OC, then obviously you're going to feel really good about anybody that you're able to recruit, knowing that they can probably do some special things. But that was, again, and that seems like it's taking away from Pavia. It's not. You just have this proof of concept with him that's incredible. And one more point on this, and it's something that you were dancing around here, but if you're gatekeeping Vandy, ask yourself why. If you turn on a Vandy game and just want them to lose, ask yourself why that's the case. Because if you want to see a guy humbled because he's brash, he's cocky, did you root against Johnny Manziel? Did you root against Baker Mayfield as well? Or did you not, because they came from programs that had the resources to warrant being in those conversations? If that's the argument, and if it's just, oh, I feel more comfortable when this player from this school is emerging. Like, again, this kind of gets into my least favorite take about college football of like, college football is better when this team is good. And okay, so you just can't enjoy Diego Pavia then?
You know what that is, man? We have like these games are not good, folks. So I think we can't spend a little bit of time on this stuff because it matters in the big scheme of things, right? I think that the players from our childhood that we grew up watching, you know, like a Tim Tebow or Reggie Bush, we have this admiration for them because we don't view them with adult eyes. Whereas when we grow up, we get a little bit more selfish. We start thinking about my team and we start poking holes in things. And so I would think a lot of SEC fans probably on the way up didn't like a Cam Newton or a Baker Mayfield or a Johnny Manziel. But I have, you know, and there have been certain styles of guy that I haven't liked, but none of those guys, because I think that when a guy is that fun, it's like you have to kind of take the hater glasses off. But I think that's what it is. It's that when you look back on your life, it's when you fell in love with football, those guys are romanticized. Whereas in the quote unquote modern era, we go, oh, well, that guy plays for this coach, or he plays for this team. I don't like him because he did this on social media. And I think with Pavia, it's like, again, cameras are everywhere. Like, I'm sure if we were following around some of these guys that you loved back in the 80s or whatever, like you wouldn't have liked them as much. But I think I just want to see fun things happen. I'm pro fun thing, you know?
With Cam, I remember, and you know, we don't compare anybody to Cam Newton. We don't. But there is maybe a little hint of gaming the system that frustrated people with Cam, who missed out on him in the recruitment, very decorated recruitment, all the stuff leading into the Heisman, his eligibility, all that was very well documented with Cecil and whatnot. And maybe there is this feeling of go get a job, Diego Pavia. But when you're making seven figures to continue playing college football, and that's a place that's allowing you to do that, and no other place will, then why would you? Like, why would you try and deviate from that? Why would you not try and do everything in your power to stay in that limelight? Like, I have no problem with it whatsoever in this day and age. And maybe there's a little bit of it that fuels it, but it's also just, for whatever reason, we gatekeep in college football because if something happens that is outside of our peripheral, we have a tougher time taking it seriously, and we don't like to be told you should take it seriously. And Diego Pavia has been telling us since he showed up, man, take me seriously. Take me seriously. And I'm worth that time. I'm worth your consideration.
He's been saying, please don't take me seriously. I'm going to prove you wrong. That's the thing. He's like, stay on that side. That's what I like about him is he faces it right on,
Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited for next week, man. Cannot wait for it. The Vandy Tennessee game, best Vandy Tennessee game ever. I shouldn't come up with that off the spot. I shouldn't speak in absolutes without actually putting some real research into that. But from the Vandy side, I mean, it's tough to script it like this, knowing what's at stake. The SEC slate next week, Friday, Egg Bowl at noon. Maybe just a couple of storylines for that one, if I had to guess. Certain coach for Ole Miss might have people talking about him a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. Georgia Tech is at 3:30, which again, we talked about Haynes King and how that it would have been that much better if they were both one-loss teams. Still going to be really good. Still going to be really weird that they're playing at Mercedes-Benz on Black Friday at 3:30. That's strange. But Texas A&M, Texas at 7:30. Cannot wait for that Friday night. And then Saturday, Vandy, Tennessee is at 3:30. And then the Iron Bowl is the lone SEC night game at 7:30. Love that gets a standalone stage in the SEC. Those are 5 SEC games alone that, in my opinion, are appointment viewing and include, if you want to talk nationally, Ohio State, Michigan is obviously going to be appointment viewing.
The greatest rivalry in sports.
What voice was that?
Oh, that was
Keith
like
Jackson?
No, that was like a meme of Howard Cosell.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I should have been able to guess that too. Yeah. Anyway, it's gonna be a great rivalry week slate, and I'm very much looking forward to it. In part because Vandy, Tennessee. All right. Speaking of rivalries, the haters said it would never happen. That being me. Shake your tail feathers, Tennessee fans. No longer can Florida troll you for never winning in the swamp. Biggest Tennessee win versus Florida since 1990, aka year one of the Spurrier era. Biggest Tennessee win in the swamp since another 20-point win back in 1955, Dwight D. Eisenhower administration. Tied for the biggest Tennessee win ever in the swamp. I'm just going to say it's the biggest win ever. Sorry, 1955. I don't know why I keep saying 1995. Very much on the brain today with what we led with. But yeah.
A&M's like, keep going. We could skip everything between the two. That's all good.
Yeah. When we're busting out is Florida about to get shut out for the first time since 1988 questions, you've done your job, Tennessee. You've done your job. That was the question. Longest active streak of not getting shut out. Florida has it. Tennessee was up 21-0 before Florida had multiple yards of offense. So, wow, that wasn't even the most insane 21-0 of week 13 because of Notre Dame going up 21-0 before the offense touched the ball against Syracuse. I don't know how many times that's ever happened in an organized football game, but it's got to be very limited. It's got to be limited. And as someone who started the Notre Dame defense special teams in my fantasy league, which I'm now about to face Emory in the championship. Can't wait for that.
That's the number 1 overall pick, consider their schedule.
Golly, they've really turned it around. I had the Texas defense for a while. Nobody cares about my fantasy team, but that worked out very, very well. Florida went back into, hey, we're just here so we don't get fined territory. We don't actually want to be on a football field. Everybody except Jaden Baugh, it felt like, for Florida. Third consecutive game that Florida has allowed 230 rushing yards. Vols just kind of got whatever they wanted in the first half and then put it on cruise control.
Joey Saban say, like, bleep through a tin horn?
Yeah. That was very much bleeped through its tin horn first half for Tennessee. It was over before the middle of the second quarter. Florida fans already hitting the exits, understandably so. I don't blame you. Joey Aguilar hits 200 yards in this one, 35th consecutive game doing it, and they felt like they were just doing that because this would be a weird game for that streak to end. Why not just keep that going? That doesn't make any sense for that to just die. Tip of the cap, Josh Heupel. Would have been a long, long flight back to Rocky Top had he lost to that version of Florida. Would have been reminded of the road woes. Instead, Tennessee's going to stay in the top 25, got a chance to play spoiler next week against Vandy. Wild to think that Tennessee entered Saturday with just one road win versus Bama, Florida, and Georgia in the post-Phil Fulmer era. Let me repeat that. Yeah. Tennessee entered Saturday with just one road win against Bama, Florida, and Georgia, three biggest rivals, in the post-Phil Fulmer era. It was Dobbs nail boot. Everybody remembers it. That's 1 in 24 in true road games in a 17-year stretch, 2 in 24 now. Borderline, how do you like me now win for Josh Heupel?
And the people that were like getting mad at Josh Heupel are saying like, oh, I don't know about that is the most entitled thing I've ever listened to that stat, guys. I mean, goodness, when you have a game like this, where you haven't even commented on my cosmetic Band-Aid yet, Connor.
I was going to let that slide because if you weren't going to bring that up, I can't be the person to call that out. But you had, I wasn't sure if that was makeup you were applying, but it is indeed a Band-Aid that's on Will's left cheek. Just like Nelly.
You get
tail
it.
Feather.
Yes.
Okay.
Because it was since you pointed this out, since Nelly was saying he was a sucker for cornrows and manicured toes. This is the last time this happened, right? So I had to pay some respect to the legend. Somebody has to make St. Louis proud. It's not going to be
golly.
Drake, all right?
How did I not pick up on that earlier? How did I not pick up on that?
Like, this is what we're talking about history, folks. When it was cool to wear a cosmetic Band-Aid. That's how long it's been since this was able to happen. So don't talk mess on Josh Heupel's name in this day and age.
I was like, does Will was it? What's going on here?
When you look across the sideline, you see real disorder, okay? It's a won't back down performance by your team. You got to be happy if you're a Tennessee fan and say, again, this is a great season. This is a floor season, but we're still not on that side of the sideline. And that's what you brought in Josh Heupel to do. Not, Florida had all these streaks about 1955 and 2003. This is, I think, the last one, right? The Kentucky streak, the Tennessee, all that, the Vandy streak. This was the last one because Florida had this consistent history. Ron DeSantis was tweeting about this one.
I'm sure there's something mixed in there. That we probably haven't picked up on yet that Florida still has in its back pocket. But this was the stat. This was the stat that even as Tennessee is doing these things with Josh Heupel, which Florida fans, truth serum, this is a safe space. You would trade places with Tennessee in a heartbeat to have an adult in the room. A year 5 coach? What's a year 5 coach? You would trade places in a heartbeat to have what Tennessee has right now with Josh Heupel. Okay, even though they are not necessarily going to the college football playoff, that type of stability would be worth signing up for. And I realize that might not be a fair thing to say because, hey, you've seen national championships, but you are trying to get what Tennessee has. Okay, and that is reality, and you saw that play out on that stage. But you're right, and this is a little reminder that Florida is just a gut job. Somebody wrote about Saturday night. Like, this is a gut job from the studs out. And I don't think that any certain coach who might be taking this job or considering this job is going to look at that and go, everything's lined up for me. It doesn't work like that in this day and age. It just doesn't. Maybe with any job, but especially with what we've seen from Florida down the stretch, really this whole season. And I got to say, there's so much irony in this Kiffin decision with what played out on Saturday, Will.
And to be clear, guys, I know everyone's going to make fun of me. I know LSU almost lost to Western Kentucky. I know LSU should have lost to Western Kentucky. I was talking off air about how they honored Brian Kelly's son, who I didn't know existed, during senior night, and then LSU gave up a touchdown on the other end. I know that program is also currently a joke, and I know they're going to get smoked by Oklahoma. Well, that's for next week, buddy.
How is it possible that Lane is an Egg Bowl win away from securing a home playoff game, and meanwhile, the jobs that he's apparently considering, the one that he currently has, LSU has that aforementioned, whatever you want to call it, against Western Kentucky, wherein they tried to fumble away that game as well.
They should
The
have been down
parlay.
10-0. A dude dropped the ball in the end zone. They should have lost to Western Kentucky. They're worse than Western Kentucky.
Western Kentucky won the graphic war with that. I will say the Mike the Tiger thing and the Hilltopper just kind of looming in the background, like he was
looming.
Grimace. It's just Red Grimace, right? That's what the mascot is. I think. I don't know. But yeah, Kiffin's probably sitting at home watching this, maybe doing some night hot yoga. I don't know what Kiffin does during a bye week.
Is the documentary crew still around Lane Kiffin every day?
No. But he's watching LSU have this, whatever you want to call it. If he's got the multi-view on, he can watch Florida. 3-win Florida is getting demolished by Tennessee in ways that it hasn't since his idol, Steve Spurrier, since he was in year one with what was thought to be a rebuilding program, but he turned things around year one, but they still got waxed by Tennessee in 1990. And yet this post-Egg Bowl decision awaits. And if you just explain someone who doesn't follow the sport closely and added in like, like the money's actually going to be the same in all three places, or at least that's what's been reported. Like everything that I've heard is that, yeah, like this party's going to match here and they're going to have this with roster funding. And it's not going to be a money issue. Nobody's going to lose Lane Kiffin just because of dollars and cents. At least that's the way that it's being portrayed right now. Believe what you will with that. But if you just told these people who don't follow college football closely that this is Lane Kiffin's dilemma, and you just had him turn on these games on Saturday night, you would have such a hard time explaining all of this, Will. It makes no sense. You say, one school's trying to get out of paying a coach $54 million with that buyout. The other school has 4 consecutive coaches that have been fired before reaching a year 5. And I just hope that there are Thanksgiving conversations about Lane Kiffin that are head scratching and dumb and just make everybody look at each other and go, college football is just really weird, isn't it?
Connor, and I guess people might get mad at this too, but I totally align with you. If I was Lane Kiffin, I wouldn't go freaking anywhere. I would use the Jimmy Sexton Classic here, masterclass, to get any and every blade of grass, every red cent out of that booster department and get the borderline illegal NIL money that they're offering at both other places and stay home. Because, boy, howdy, yeah, you look across those two programs and you see the expectations and, hey, full stadiums are one thing, but when they're empty by halftime, buddy, it's not, that just goes to show that like you have to fill those seats. And I think, it would be a full rebuild. And maybe Lane Kiffin does have that need to prove himself at the highest level. But again, with the holistic way he's viewing life, with his little daily, phrases he's giving and everything, I have always believed this is a Jimmy Sexton masterclass, and I think he's going to stay put. But that being said, it's going to be high drama either way. But I think he is such a troll that he is playing this kind of perfectly. And that being said, he could go to Florida and I could be, wow, I was wrong again, but I am loving this season. It's hilarious.
It's just so weird that you can't look at either program and go, well, that's built for success right now. And that maybe that's just the way that college football works. But Florida's got a team that looks like Jaden Baugh is the only guy out there that cares. And he's essentially doing what Dameon Pierce did in 2021. Dameon Pierce, all-time great clip where the helmet pops off in the Florida State game and he still gets into the end zone. I think they whistled it off because you can't score. You can't be like touching the football when your helmet's off or whatever. But it feels very much shades of that when the last time Florida fired a coach. And, Tennessee's defense is terrible and Florida still looks this inept offensively. So you're going to have a total offensive overhaul for whoever the next head coach is. But Florida is very likely looking at its 5th time in 6 seasons in which it's not going to have a top 70 scoring defense. How is it possible that Florida is this bad was the question that I kept asking myself. And, something that's just changed so much about the sport with new coaches and how they evaluate teams and rosters and all these things. When Dan Mullen took over for Jim McElwain in 2018, he inherited 17 returning starters. And I remember being annoyed that Florida, who's coming off this disastrous 4-win season, credit card 9, Sharks, the whole deal, disaster with Jim, fake death threats, all of it with Jim McElwain, coming off this 4-win season. And then to start 2018, all Florida had to do to get back into the top 25 was beat an FCS team. And that it was like, oh, well, they returned all this production. This was set up for Dan Mullen to have a lot of success. And the irony is that Florida then lost immediately to Kentucky after getting in the top 25. They beat Joe Burrow a month later. But you get what I'm saying. There's no world in which you're looking at these situations and thinking that anything is worth salvaging, maybe with the exception of a couple of coaches here and there. And that's just, I don't know. I kind of can't get over that.
I mean, I will say, and again, you can call me a fan, but I've dumped on my team enough here. I think the LSU defense is a lot to like. I think that they have had a lot over the course of the season where they have not quit. I think some of the stuff with Mansour Delane, DJ Pickett, you can look at some of those guys. You look at the freshman receivers at Florida and say the same thing. So I think there is talent on both of these teams. I think pretty clearly the Lane Kiffin skill set and why he's such a uniquely good fit for both of these jobs is that you really can't tell how much of it's play calling. I think that, I mean, yes, you can. You can tell that a lot of it's play calling, because unless we think DJ Lagway is some bum, unless we think that, all of these great LSU, portal receivers and guys they've had for years are suddenly just dropping the football, it appears that it's just offensive operation that's making these teams unravel. So I will say it that way, where it's like, hey, yeah, it might take a very specific amount of things that you have to do in order, but Lane has proven to be able to do those things. So I could see it working at either place.
I think either situation, you're going to have 30 to 40 guys that you're relying on in the portal. It's going to be that much. And, with Napier, the thinking was, well, Mullen didn't want to recruit anymore. So Napier is going to bring some of his guys over from Louisiana. He had like Osiris Torrance and he brought in Montreal Johnson Jr. And he had some pieces that were ready to play. And that was all well and good. And then those guys will be the ones who kind of right the ship. And then couple that with the improved high school recruiting, you're going to look up in 2-3 years from now, that's going to be the plan. And then they're going to be able to get this thing and go. And it's going to elevate the floor early on. And ultimately, they're going to be in a much better place by the time that Napier has kind of, made his imprint on the program. But there's just nothing about this that works like that anymore. And Florida players will have, and LSU players, they're going to have the 15-day transfer window that starts 5 days after the new coach is hired. And I believe they still get the normal window in January, if I'm not mistaken, January 2nd through the 15th with that. So anyway, I know that's a lot of stuff that's not really related to this football game, but
it is worth saying, too, I believe these two programs have had a combined 2 guys decommit since they've lost their head coaches, which is stellar. I mean, it says that whoever is there, and hey, maybe whoever wins the lane sweepstakes, the other team has a lot of decommitments or something like that. But I think that that's what you can look at and go, LSU does have the number one player in the next cycle who's been at like every game this season, who's still locked in and recruiting for LSU for some reason. It's good to see somebody believes in LSU. Good for that kid. But point being, like, I think that that's what's so interesting is that seeing will the dam break at these historic programs. We saw it not really happen in Alabama when Saban left, right? When we talked about how that locker room was able to stay together. I think that it's going to be such a PR race for whoever does not get Lane Kiffin to quickly pivot to the next guy and keep everybody in the boat.
Yeah, but even if you're looking at this and going, oh, the LSU defense, they have pieces or something. Week's probably gone to the NFL. Mansour Delane probably gone to the NFL. DJ Pickett, you would think would be back because he was a true freshman this year, but you just don't know. Like, you don't know with any of these guys anymore. And so this is going to be a whole lot of shuffling of the deck with all of these programs, with the exception of maybe Tennessee. Go for Tennessee. Shake a tail feathers. I can't believe you put on a Band-Aid. I can't believe you put on.
You know what I'm saying? Hey, it was a moment in history. It made St. Louis cool for a brief period of time. You got to represent what history is being made in Gainesville.
You made my day, Will. That was incredible. All right, let's close this out with Arkansas and Texas. Good for Arkansas for not losing a one-score game. I kept asking myself. I didn't
take that off because people are going to look at the YouTube and be like, what's wrong with him now? This has nothing to do with the Arkansas game.
I really thought this was a Michael Scott
prison Mike
situation. Yeah. Cold sore?
Yeah.
Arkansas was able to avoid the very treacherous, painful existence that is losing by one score against SEC teams. So cheers to that. When you allow 52 points, you probably don't deserve to lose by one score. But Arch Manning played the best game of his career, probably, against that very sorry Arkansas defense. At least best game of his career against a power conference opponent.
Probably including high school too. I don't think he was doing it like that at the lower level.
Probably true. 4 passing touchdowns. He had a rushing score. He had a receiving score. The receiving play was really nice. Actually, really nice athleticism added to the NFL draft film. Number 1 overall pick back on. First Texas player to do all 3 of those in the same game ever. He looked extremely
comfortable. Did you see the Aflac trivia on that? He was the first SEC player to do that since 2014. Do you know who that player was?
2014.
It's not a quarterback.
It's not a quarterback. Oh, man. My initial, no, I was going to say like Gurley.
So
No.
I thought it was Dak. The answer is Pharaoh Cooper.
Oh, Farrell Cooper. That actually makes sense. That actually makes sense. He was the all-purpose slot guy in the SEC for a good bit there with South Carolina. Farrell Cooper, good player, really good player. Had a little cup of coffee in the NFL too. Was probably not in the NFL at the right time with the kickoff and the changes that unfolded with that. There's your Farrell Cooper update. So Arch, rare territory, looked the part, had fun, even in a moment where after one of those touchdowns, he's going up to the camera and he's like, should I taunt? Nah, maybe I shouldn't. I should just go back and celebrate with my teammates, not go full same Houston State again. But it's almost like when reality sank in that Texas's playoff chances were very likely cooked, that he played his best game against a bad defense. Go figure. No more snark from me about Arch today, because it's fun to watch Arch when he's right. Like he can navigate the pocket extremely well. He can make the downfield throws. He's very confident too. And he still is going to struggle with accuracy. That is going to be his biggest area that he needs to fix in the offseason, assuming he is returning to Texas, like everyone has pretty much mapped out. But he is very talented still. He is all of those things. The arm is still worth all the hype. Maybe not all the hype. The arm is still worth some hype, I could say. And he's very likely going to start off as a preseason All-SEC guy. So people are going to be mad at that. You need to brace for it right now, because he's going to finish the season putting up really big numbers, especially if he puts up big numbers against a respected A&M defense and does that kind of, final home game of the regular season. But you see that this is someone who just could not necessarily generate the big aha plays during the season, during the first part of the regular season, and what it looks like when he's actually able to do that. It's not swing pass to Brian Wingo that goes 75 yards. The stat that they showed that kind of encapsulated all that: 2 completions of 40 air yards this season prior to Saturday. Keep 3 on Saturday. That's good. That'll play.
That is correctly playing the Arkansas defense. And I think, I'm going to be the typical sports gas bag here where I go, okay, but I think that's what it is. When things change, things change. It's not really going back on a take, because he struggled this year, and I never exactly bought the hype, coming out, but I think this is the first time that you really did see those glimpses where you start to go, huh. And in my opinion, right, the one that struck that stuck out to me was the touchdown he had kind of going across his body, but really in the corner of the end zone. But it was kind of in that combination of like
back middle of the end zone.
Yeah, like kind of almost like a wheel route, where it was like, oh wow, you placed that ball so perfectly, and kind
that
of
was a different play. You're right.
like going across his body, it was guy like out of the backfield, and it's like, oh wow, like that's the type of throw that we always talk about. You have to touch on it, right? It's not just like having an arm strength thing. It's not just hitting a go ball or deep or a post pattern. It's like, no, like you have to put that in a specific place where your guy can catch it running. And so yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot to like. I think that again, it comes down to putting it all together, having the consistency. But to your point, it's like, who else coming back next year, right? There's going to be a whole portal class that we're going to have to look at. So it's hard to predict, right? Because some guys, I mean, again, like a John Mateer this year, we couldn't have seen coming probably at this point in the season last year. So yeah, but I think finally, I think he has kind of shown why there was so much hype around him other than his last name.
Speaking of portal guys, how big of a bag will Texas drop on one Cam Coleman's doorstep? Pretty big.
Yep. He would look great in burnt orange. I'll be honest. The evil empire with Cam Coleman.
Cam Coleman deserves to find love. And by love, I mean a quarterback and an offense that actually suits him. I want good things for Cam Coleman.
Well, they might have found one on Saturday. Hold on.
True.
Deuce night, the truth.
The deuce is loose. The amount of time that I spent thinking about what it would look like to have Cam Coleman in a better situation, it's more than it should be at this point. And Auburn fans, don't take offense. Your situation's been bad. It's been very, very bad. And you're hoping, like, what would be the biggest offseason win besides getting a coach with a clue who doesn't just want to play golf is keeping Cam Coleman. That should be the biggest priority. But anyway, Texas like very fittingly displays this version of itself right as the defense is kind of going in the toilet. Texas's defense has been leaking oil for a bit. No, Anthony Hill Jr. was brutal, obviously, but it was a shootout in the first half of this one. And Texas didn't really take over until Taylon Green reminded the world that he is indeed the four local quarterback.
I mean, every other game, he has the most extravagant, just exotic turnover. And this one, I mean, chef's kiss, man. Wow.
You could play a lot of football and not have a turnover look quite like what he did. And I tried to Zapruder film this because I watched it probably 5 times just to see how it made me feel. And it was awkward and uncomfortable. But then I slowed it down and realized it wasn't just him hitting the wrong button. He's trying to reach out on 3rd and 3, where it looks like he's trying to extend his 6'6" frame, wingspan, whatever.
I'm with you so far. Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, normal things that one does, even if he had no chance of picking it up with his legs. And he thinks that he's got a tight end to flip it to that's kind of just to his left, but the tight end is blocking and not looking for the football because he thinks Taylon Green is about to run. So not only would the tight end not have caught it, but Green is getting hit as he's doing this Josh Allen flip. And it's bad. I mean, it's really, really bad. It is, sir, how did you get to this level of football with that still being something you could physically capable do type of bad? And look, we are appreciators of all things Taylon Green entertainment, but this was 3-4 locos before we even went out. It was much.
Yeah, that is what do they call it in Europe? A tactical chunder. You got to just puke and rally if you're at this point, if you're night already,
Tactical chunder?
Yes, that's something I learned when I went to Europe. Techie chun, that's what they call the puke and rally out there. And so, yeah, you got to really reset your whole system if you're at this many four locos deep where you're like, oh, there's a tight end there. It's like, brother, this is a run play. This is he can't read your mind, dude. Like, and again, like, it's one thing to try to make a play to even to lateral the ball in some situations, but if there's no design route to be run, you can't just start flipping the ball like that. You might even get a penalty for doing that in the wrong situation.
Yeah, and if you have 3-4 locos before you go out, you don't even make it to the bar. You're just upstairs on the bathroom floor. And very fittingly, we saw Taylon Green leave this game with a hamstring injury. I'm not saying those two things were directly related, but it kind of felt like it at the time. And then you get to see KJ Jackson come in. I'm pretty sure, friend of the program, Katie George, I'm pretty sure she accidentally said KJ Jefferson as well when kind of introducing him. How could you not? That's too similar of a name. And I realize KJ Jackson being a lefty helps. Different built physically. They don't look exactly alike in that way. But KJ Jackson, after having, 4 years of KJ Jefferson, come on. You can't, Arkansas, what are we doing here?
Yeah, some of this stuff is like too good. Like AI could never recreate this, right? And I made some of that point about the Western Kentucky game, but it's like, okay, yeah, the backup is KJ Jackson, KJ Jefferson 2.0, and it's just you're stuck in the twilight zone of bad football.
Yeah, he had some juice a little bit, but not enough to keep pace.
To be fair, he played well. Actually, you know what? That's unfair. He was the best quarterback they had on the field that day.
Yeah, the strip sack was bad. That was tough, the scoop and score. But yeah, I mean, he did some things to move the football against Texas defense that at least still has some talent on it, but man, you could forget about it. Texas was always going to need a ton of chaos to make the field. None of that happened in week 13. None of it. I mean, top 14 teams, none of them lost. Highest ranked team that lost was USC on the road, 15th. Georgia Tech was 16th, and they lost too. So the selection committee doesn't have to really change its opinion of Texas. And while a blowout against A&M might have some on notice, a 3-loss team is going to need a ton of help. I don't think Texas got it. Too many hurdles going into the final week. I mean, they would need true Armageddon in order for that to happen. But on the bright side for Sark, your own index is wrong, and 3 losses aren't going to get you fired, and you're not going anywhere, according to you.
Yeah. Also, one more quick positive for Arkansas. Mike Washington is a dude. I'm interested. They only give him 4 carries in the second half for some reason, which I mean, yeah, I guess
Down
the game
$1 billion.
But your backup quarter, like that guy had that run he had was tough. So that's the end of me being nice to Arkansas today. But yeah, no, Texas again. To your point, the chillest. What would you say the most? It wasn't unprepared.
Most casual team in college football.
In college football is just so correct. And even in this game where they needed kind of a big second half to make it the score look as lopsided as it ended up being. And so their season's been, right? It's kind of we'll start the car later. It's cold outside. We'll figure it out. And you get out there and it just doesn't quite start. And it's like, oh, we're going to be late now. And so that being said, like it's what they. I hate to say it, but it's what they deserve. Yeah, I've said there are teams that I just will pretty much never feel sorry for. Texas is on that list where it's like you had all the tools, you had this great preseason ranking, everything was right in front of you where you could have stomached these losses, and yet the way that you lost and the way that some of these games are close where they shouldn't have been. I mean, their record is honestly a little bit better than they played down the stretch here. Now, again, they're rounding into form here. They could be a tough team for A&M and maybe in a bowl game per se if the other team doesn't care or whatever, or maybe if they do. But it doesn't really matter. It's still a hollow season that is a disappointment when you start off preseason number one.
A&M fans, I need you to earmuff this. Okay, give you 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Texas is probably going to win on Friday night, and we're going to have to relitigate all these arguments. Not we, but the collective public in college football is going to have to hear the lobbying from Sark, and it's going to be, look, we beat 3 top 10 opponents. Look at what we were able to do. Don't pay attention to the way that Florida played out. Don't pay attention to that. It was 14-10 in this fourth quarter against Georgia. Don't pay attention to how that actually played out.
What if the chair literally comes out and says, well, Sark right here, it says that after 3 losses, you should be fired. So you certainly can't make the playoff.
I would kind of love that. I don't wish bad things for Texas. I don't wish bad things for Sark. I just don't like it when dumb things are said and then validated. I like it when dumb things are said and then called out. That deserves to be called out.
Get ready to learn Birmingham Bowl, buddy. Actually, it doesn't matter that you beat A&M by your own admission. Anyway, so, yeah, no, I mean, again, it's just, I hate to say it this way, but no, this is true. If you have expectations, you have expectations. When you are a 2-time conference championship participant in 2 different conferences, when you are a 2-time playoff participant, a 3-loss season, when you start number 1, and if you beat Texas A&M to end the year, shouldn't make it a moral victory.
I get really close to getting my favorite stat. I'll save it for if Texas loses against A&M. I mean, I am assuming that Texas is not making the college football playoff at this point, but that will be the 20th time in the last 21 seasons that the AP preseason number 1 failed to win a national championship. Crazy. Just saying. All right. Speaking of the playoff top 12, what's it going to look like after such an eventful week 13? Oh my gosh. You probably know how it's going to look like. I do have one little thing in here that I want to get your take on. So 1 Ohio State, 2 Indiana, 3 Texas A&M, 4 Georgia, 5 Texas Tech, 6 Oregon. I think Oregon will be at 6 and Ole Miss will be at 7. And then Oklahoma at 8, Notre Dame at 9, Alabama at 10, BYU at 11, Utah at 12. Kind of sneaky that Utah has been getting a lot of love from the selection committee as well. They've done some impressive things. But Oregon jumping Ole Miss and getting that spot as Ole Miss's resume, oddly, in some ways you could argue it's getting better because the Oklahoma winning in Norman is very significant. But also the fact that Oregon was already still kind of valued at least somewhat by the selection committee and that they weren't being ranked behind a 2-loss team. You know, they had resume issues, I think, going into that game that we mentioned before, but I think beating USC and kind of controlling that game, I didn't really ever feel like USC was going to win that game, and not just because Lincoln Riley, just game flow, didn't really feel like it. I think they're going to probably put Oregon ahead after Ole Miss was idle this week. So that's the only real source of debate. And again, I would not have Alabama behind Notre Dame. This is not how I feel they should be. It's what I think they will do.
This is one of those moments where it's like, oh, I might not be fit for sports media talking personality because this is one of those where it makes all the sense in the world in this moment, I think. And any of the outrage would be a little bit manufactured, and I'll tell you why. Ole Miss's season could obviously go a billion ways this week, right? So if you're the selection committee, it makes all the sense in the world to drop Ole Miss 1 spot right now because of number 1, which you just mentioned, the big Oregon win. But, there's a version of this where Ole Miss comes out and smokes Mississippi State, and Lane Kiffin goes, I'm not bleeping leaving. And it's like, okay, Ole Miss, they're hot. They're ready for a playoff run. There's another version where, okay, Lane Kiffin announces he's leaving, or, even if they struggle in the Egg Bowl, where you go, oh, because they've already pre-shaded that they're going to, consider dropping Ole Miss. If
Chris Lowe reported that the selection committee would consider dropping Ole Miss if they didn't have Lane Kiffin on the sideline, even though Lane Kiffin will be on the sideline if they're in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, so like, exactly. Like that being said, they've already kind of hinted to that. So pre-dropping them here to avoid more outrage later on, where oh my gosh, we were the fifth team in America. I know they would never get that high, but let's just say, like, oh, everybody loves Ole Miss. They're number 5 in America. Well, now that they've dropped 5, 6 spots down here, now that they don't have Lane Kiffin, this is an injustice. The college football committee, I think, like I said, for just every reason, makes sense for them to set themselves up. And like I said, if Lane Kiffin stays and if they convincingly beat Ole Miss, or beat Mississippi State, which I feel like we haven't seen anything in Mississippi State that says that shouldn't happen, especially if Lane Kiffin does stay. They should do that kind of regardless, right? But that it's setting up for a hero's return as well for Lane Kiffin, where they do jump Oregon again. They could even maybe in a crazy reality jump to Texas Tech if something weird happens there. So yeah, I'm just saying, like, it just it all goes one direction. Any outrage is kind of by design.
Let's close on this. What do you think Lane does? Not what do you hope? What would you do? What do you think Lane Kiffin does?
I think he stays with Ole Miss, man. I've been saying that throughout. I think it's too loud, and he's loud, and I understand that. But I think at the end of the day, the louder things get, I was there for all the at the 1 yard line stuff for LSU before, where it's, oh, we almost got this coach. We almost got Marcus Freeman to be our defensive coordinator one time. So at the end of the day, I think that in this modern age of college football, Lane Kiffin is the one guy who might buck this trend because, like I said, he's such a troll. But why would you leave Ole Miss, especially if all this stuff is being offered and Ole Miss is matching it? That's the thing.
Yes. So as all this is coming out and LSU feels confident, you still feel in your heart of hearts he returns to Ole Miss.
I do. I mean, I just think that there's so much that he's done. If you look at kind of his tweets and the way that he has like kind of positioned some of himself to have, because as a guy who could be accused of like from Lane Kiffin's standpoint being a little bit arrogant or whatever, it's like he is setting himself up, I think, to do the I'm not bleeping leaving, I'm staying here. You guys, it was never in doubt. I just needed to feel loved and need you guys to show up to the games. And again, like I would get both sides of it, but I just don't think that he needs it. And I think it would be put a target on his back after all the goodwill he's done.
Correct.
Really crawling all the way back for 10 years to just settle that on fire. I know that we've seen all these different reports, but at the same time, the one answer that keeps coming back to me is, what does he benefit? And if he gets the money, if he gets the power, if he gets all the NIL and the press that could lead him to a great recruiting class in the future, I don't know why you leave Oxford, man.
The one thing I'm hoping for, if he does come back to Ole Miss, which again, I'm still, I'll close by saying I'm on record every single turn saying I think he's coming back to Ole Miss. I want newspaper ad to announce it. Clarion Ledger, support local journalism. Let's get Lane, I'm back. Same way that we had Michael Jordan, the big, it's like an iconic Chicago Tribune cover, just I'm back. Maybe it was also, they do like a Sports Illustrated thing. There was some sort of iconic cover just saying like, I'm back. That's it. That's all. That's all you need to say. That just announce it that way. Instead of no tweets, no stupid TikTok stuff. Don't ask me to ask me to do the YouTube TV ESPN thing and click on a random link. All right. Sorry.
That I would watch. Unlike the playoff committee show, I would watch a Lane Kiffin decision special, and I'll do you. I think that's what it's going to be. I think that if he comes back, it's going to be an Ole Miss social media like spoof on the decision or something like that. Where I guess we're writing this down now. We can just both be wrong tomorrow and we'll go to Florida. But point being, I think that's what is good because their social media department kills it. Right, probably like underrated, maybe the best in the SEC. And I think the everybody on pins and needles, I'm coming home, is going to be like the opposite of LeBron, where he's in front of all those kids in Akron or whatever, where he's actually in front of the people that he's coming back to. Yeah.
I'm coming home. Great song too. All right. That's a pod. That'll do it. Please, if you haven't, leave us a 5-star review. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the SDS Pod, at South Down South, at TJ Guerra, at Chris Hart. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.